Hi, I'm Alistair Ben and you're watching Expressive Photography. A few weeks ago we had quite a lot of snow here in the west of Scotland, which is now all gone, but we went and recorded a video down in the Glencoe area, which isn't very far from our house. And we'd left before it was light. Of course, it was pitch dark, and then we've got quite a journey to get through all the windy glens and stuff to get there. And of course, when it's been snowing and you're going into these iconic locations, there's a certain expectation that you're going to have incredible conditions. And we went back down to the scene that we've featured a couple of times now on the channel, which is down by the river here, and it kind of winds through the glen, and you've got the beautiful mountains in the background, and it's a really nice composition. It's very self-contained. And as you can see from this shot here, there was a reasonable amount of snow, but there was, of course, some of the rocks. The red rocks were shining through. The light was a bit subdued, but we had some nice light on the mountains, but not a lot of colour. Now, you can hear in the language, of course, that we start talking about clouds and colour. Now, I've been photographing professionally for over a decade and working pretty damned hard at it for over 20 years. And I know that up until about 2016, this was the type of landscape photographer I was. It was colour, clouds, preparation, being in the right place at the right time. And now I try not to be so focused on those types of things. But when you go to these iconic locations, it's very easy to expect or hope for something. Now, we live very close to here, and even we have expectations. I hate to think what it'd be like for someone driving up from England or coming over from the United States to come to this place, and they might only have a day or two. And if the conditions aren't optimal from a photographic point of view, I can understand there's a lot of disappointment that can creep into our psychology. What I do want to do here, and just bear with me to pause for a second. I want to compare the two shots from the one on the right was before Christmas, with very little snow on the mountains, virtually none, and the one on the left was the one from this morning that we were talking about. And the first thing that we noticed when we went down there was how low the river was. It had been sub-zero for a number of weeks, and the water just all gets locked up on the mountains. There's no water flowing down. All the waterfalls have dried up, or very much dried up. And you can see the version on the right, there's so much more water flowing through the canyon, and that is a dynamic and really engaging element. When we got down to the river on the snowy morning, the low river, it was just like, where's it gone? You know, it was really just, you know, the bit that I probably find the most exciting about the whole scene had gone. And I'll express that there was a certain amount of disappointment. I think that there was no flow, and I felt that the composition was maybe a little bit compromised by the lack of the water there. But you know, I set up my my 12mm prime and got this shot, and I think the way the elements, it's very open, and obviously because of all the snow, it's a much brighter and joyful photograph than the version on the right. The one on the right now just seems so subdued in comparison, and I quite liked that before Christmas time. Now I look at it and think it's a bit kind of flat and lifeless. So it's ironic that the one on the left now with all the snow feels totally different and much more dynamic and open and energetic. And again, it's all these words that I use all the time. I wrote a book, I published a book recently, which is Expressive Landscape Photography. And what that book does is it charts my evolution from that type of photographer who was chasing great light and had all these expectations through my time in the Gobi Desert, and then this change of my mentality, which is a much more generally thoughtful and introspective type of photographer. And I find great joy in the landscape, regardless of whether it's optimal or, as some may call it, suboptimal. It's easy for us to use this language, which is, oh, the clouds weren't very good, the light wasn't very good, the river was too low, whatever it may be. You know, the clouds came over, the clouds were in the wrong direction, the light wasn't perfect. You know, all of these judgments that we make. And on the members channel this week, I published a video about having an empty mind, it's a meditation statement where you aren't judging, you aren't striving, you aren't having these expectations. And striving in landscape photography, seeking and challenging ourselves constantly to maximize everything. Is that really going to be the most joyful, therapeutic way to approach landscape photography? And I think not. If you have strong opinions about this, please dive into the comments section below, because I'm always interested to hear feedback. Because if I'm talking about all of this stuff and no one agrees or it doesn't resonate with anybody, then I'm kind of wasting my time. Because to me, landscape photography is evolving into this huge thing with hundreds of millions of people around the world engaging in landscape photography. And I want to see, am I doing something of value here? Is talking about mindfulness and self-development and the therapy and the joy and the peacefulness that it brings to us. It's important for me to know if that's resonating with you folks or not. So please give me some feedback. This was the shot I went to take on this morning. It was very much the target. Now, don't forget, I'm here to make videos as well. So, I mean, we have to go out with some kind of plan. But ironically, it was when we first got out of the car that we had the best light. Now, does that mean that I was late? Possibly. There are limits to how early we can get to locations for a reason that I'm not going to mention, but we are limited with how early we can get to these locations. But when we first got there, the light was very nice, and this is looking up into the mountains from the car park. So basically where I parked the car, and as soon as I got out, I just saw how beautiful everything was. And this is handheld with my 80-400, it's probably about 80-90 millimeters wide. And just the way the light was catching some of these peaks, I found to be really beautiful. And I made 3 photographs, and I'll show them all to you now, but I like them. You know, these are much more, I was reacting to the light. I was engaging with the light. I was seeing spontaneously. I didn't strive for this photograph. I didn't seek it out. I just happened to park the car, looked up, saw the scene, grabbed my camera and took it. Very little thought, simply just getting it exposed and focused, and that's it. The composition, I've cropped this into a 16:9 because below there's a lot of messy mountainside, and above there wasn't any more clouds. So I've tried to contain the scene within the frame like that. And I think the bowl, the kind of U-shaped tree bowl, is quite an appealing, and the fact that it takes you through to the fog there, I find really quite interesting as well. And then the snowy peak up on the left-hand side and a touch of this beautiful snow up on the right-hand side. So I was, these are spontaneous photographs, whereas the one that we started off with, that was the plan, that was the mission of the morning. Very much because I was going to make a video of it and compare the snowy one with the one I'd taken before Christmas. That was the plan of the video. Zooming in a little bit further, you start to look at the beautiful corniced and icy face of this fantastic mountain in the west of Scotland. This is a truly alpine area, and my good friend Tim Parkin has been ice climbing in this glen recently, and the joy on his face as you see him exploring his physicality and hanging on by just points of metal, ice axes and crampons. The joy that Tim has been expressing through his social media feed has just been wonderful. So yeah, both Tim and Charlotte are inspirational in the way they enjoy their local environment. But again, this is a photograph. This is cropped into 2.35:1, which is the cinematic panoramic format, which is typical for some movie formats. It's a well-known panoramic format. And again, I've cooled the space down a little bit so everything's whiter. We don't have that warmth in the light because I want to emphasize its structure and its coolness. If you introduce the warm light into it, and you'll see in the next photograph, there's a bit of warm light and I'm still not 100% happy with it. But when we have scenes like this, it feels expansive. This has a sort of Colin Pryor feel to it, I suppose, that wide-angled panoramic format. Yeah, I kind of like it. I think you probably wouldn't think Scotland when you first saw it. I've seen lots of scenes like this, more like in the Himalaya and so forth. Now, the final photograph is quite a bit moodier, and I think this was just a processing decision. I've allowed just that bright lit patch of snow to be the dominant thing. Before anyone comments on it, I've checked and it's not clipped. It's just the way the warm light was interacting with the surface. Some of it was just really bright and some of it wasn't, but I have checked to make sure it's not clipped. But yeah, I went for this version of the photograph. It's kind of desaturated, it's quite a bit darker, it's quite moody, and there's just a little wash of the warmer light there coming through. And it's about atmosphere and luminosity, of course, and the mood of the image is obviously much more somber. It has a more kind of intimidating feel, I suppose. So all in all, it was a very enjoyable morning out, and it's actually quite a few weeks now. It must be 6 weeks or more now, I suppose, since we went down to there. Just the way the videos have worked out over the last few weeks. We went out for a period in January there with all the snow and the mist and the atmosphere, and we made quite a lot of videos in a short period of time, and that's allowed us to focus on all the other projects. I'm working on my Gobi book, which I am hoping to get off to the printers probably by the middle of the spring. So you can, there's definitely going to be announcements about the upcoming Gobi book. I'm working on the new videos, which I mentioned when I did the Colour of Meaning ebook. I said there was going to be videos that are going to accompany that. And that's going to be a dodging and burning masterclass where I look at all the ways of dodging and burning, both in Lightroom and in Photoshop. And that's going to include the history brush and luminosity masks and the LAB color space. So it's going to be a real sort of 5, 6, 7 hour video course. And again, that'll be out before the end of March. So lots of new stuff coming from us. Yeah, thanks very much for watching as normal. Welcome to our little corner of the Scottish Highlands. I hope it brings you some comfort in these difficult times when we're still all in lockdown. And we are spending so much time in the office, it's just ridiculous. I mean, this is my home now, so we're not getting out at all, really. So I'm glad we did get out and get quite a lot of these videos made earlier on in the year. So here we are, another video. All about really this expectation and striving to make photographs when in fact if we allow ourselves to just react then quite often we make photographs that we tend to feel a little bit more connected with because we didn't have that expectation before we left the car. If you enjoy this stuff, do the usual, thumbs up, give me a subscribe, turn on the notifications, and hopefully this stuff is doing you some good and you enjoy your weekly visits to the Expressive Photography YouTube channel. See you again next weekend, and thanks very much for tuning in. Bye for now.